Today, we are honored to present a panel of exceptional women who have shattered glass ceilings, challenged norms, and paved the way for progress in their respective domains. Before I introduce our esteemed panel, I'd like to thank Manhattanville College for hosting today's event. Reed Castle is a gorgeous site, and we're always pleased to partner together to hold this event. Additionally, I'd like to thank Shark Creative and Oasis Day Spa for their support today. Our panelists embody resilience, leadership, and innovation, serving as beacons of inspiration for individuals aspiring to make a meaningful impact. As we delve into insightful conversations and share experiences, we invite you to join us on a journey of empowerment and the celebration of the remarkable achievements of women. Without further ado, let us welcome our distinguished panelists. Dr. Joan Fallon, founder and CEO of CureMark, a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company. Dr. Fallon holds over 200 patents and authored a book, Goodbye Status Quo, which was released in 2022. Diane Kelly, who started her career serving in a variety of frontline nursing roles and is now the president of Greenwich Hospital and executive VP and chief nursing officer of Yale New Haven Health. And Cheryl McKissack Daniel, president and CEO of McKissack, which is a family-owned business that is one of the oldest minority women-owned professional design and construction firms in the United States. Catherine Sabol, my fellow partner at Citrin Cooperman, will now lead us in today's discussion. If you have any questions for our panelists, we will have a 10 to 15 minute question and answers at the end, where we'll open up the floor to everyone. But for now, I pass the torch on to Catherine.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, and thanks everyone for being here. I have to follow. Chelsea was the moderator last year, and she did a really great job, so I'm a little bit nervous here, but hopefully I'll be able to do it. So thanks so much again. My name is Catherine Sabol. I'm a partner in Citrin Cooperman's state and local tax practice. I have been in public accounting about 20 years, and I was promoted to partner last year. And we're super excited for this panel. I think last year we were all feeling a little bit of the post-COVID burnout, and we focused the panel on work-life balance. But I think this year, we're all feeling the post-COVID has sort of settled a bit, and we wanted to focus on women who have found a way to succeed in fields typically dominated by men, which all of you have done. We'd like to hear your advice, how you went about it, sponsors, allies, mentors you've had along the way, and hopefully we can take some of their success and apply it to our own careers and personal life. So let's get started. Cheryl, you have had a unique path to becoming a president and CEO of one of the largest minority women-owned construction companies. What are some pivotal moments in your career that have gotten you to where you are?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's so nice to see each and every one of you. Pivotal moments for me usually were trials and tribulations, and with every trial, there seemed to be major blessings that came out of it. And so, I'm here today to say that when you feel, downtrodden, that, forces are coming against you, that's when you can shine the most and go to the next level. My family is 5 generations in this country. The first descendant of our family came here in 1790 as a slave, and he was taught the trade of making bricks. And his son was a master carpenter, Moses McKissack II. And Moses McKissack III and his brother Calvin were the first black licensed architects in the country. And so when you think about overcoming trials and tribulations, think about the Deep South in the 1790s. And so for my family to be able to overcome all the setbacks, hatred, bigotry, when I think about that with the trials that I have, I always feel that I can overcome. And so entering into engineering school at Howard University, there were only probably, thank God I had a twin sister. So we had each other. And being able to worked through that process, and probably only 4 women in the entire engineering school. was the beginning of my education of what it was like to be a woman and Black in America. And so with that kind of education, I was able to go out into the construction field. And I remember working at a very large construction company, and I won't say the name because they're national and they're strategic partners of mine that I work with all the time. I remember the guys saying to me, we'd go out for drinks, "You'll never make it here because you're not Irish." And I'm thinking to myself, it's amazing now because we do joint ventures where McKissick is the lead, and they are the sub, okay? So you're overcoming battles all the time. We were just talking this morning, we're just exhausted. We're exhausted. So, just don't ever get tired of that. Right. But pivotal moments happen constantly. It's how you look at them and take them and turn them into a positive. Did I answer the question?
Of course. I mean, that is a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing. And, I guess maybe what would be one mistake, I don't know, maybe in the last 5 years that you've made that you've sort of, shook off the dirt and sort of said, all right, I'm going to move on from this?
Well, it probably wasn't 5 years ago, but I would say it was 2013. We were growing really quickly in Philadelphia and in New York. We were taking on very large projects. Our revenues were high. And it's funny I say that because I have a board member who says, revenues kill, profits thrill. So our revenues were high, but our profits were negative. And, we didn't realize it at the same time. We were having an internal breakdown, so our accounting was all messed up. We had called
Citron.
We had a CFO who I always said, every once in a while he'd have a lucid moment, but I didn't realize it. Literally, I walked into his office one day, I see a big bottle of Polar Springs water, not realizing it was full of vodka. Thought it was water. So going through that and finding out that we are $1 million negative retained earnings. We are at, the highest level of borrowing money from our bank, and we're strapped for cash, and, we need to meet our obligations. So that was a mistake that I own 100%. I should have paid attention to certain things, and as a result of that, once I found out what was happening, the very next day, I got on the phone first with my bank, and I told them A to Z. We owe taxes, we're negative retained earnings, we owe this, and we're at the max, and I just want you to know first, but here is what I'm doing. I'm firing 25 people today. My Philadelphia operation, I'm taking that leader and spinning him off and tell him he can have it. He did a bad job, and so he could just take it. We don't want it. And we're gonna go back to our core business. And we put our heads down, and in 18 months, we had a complete turnaround to the point that the bank had me as their poster child speaking at turnaround conferences.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's just so valuable to know that, when you're in your own career and you're making mistakes, not to really, harp on them too much and let them sort of control, what defines you. So that's amazing. Dr. Joan, science and technology are an emerging field for women. I mean, clearly it is a field that has historically been dominated by men. Interestingly, I never really thought about it, but you told me that women and minorities hold very few patents, which I never truly thought about. How did you get people to listen to your ideas? And, how do we get more women and people of color to apply for patents? And, why is that important?
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on becoming a partner.
Oh, thank you.
And Cheryl, I don't know how I could ever top anything you just said. I just don't even know how you can do that. But I think that it struck me so keenly about the fact that you had vision. And I think that when we have adversities, getting lucid and having vision is really important so that you get to see the whole landscape. And that's what you acted on, which is great. And with respect to patents, I think that it goes back to women not taking ownership of their ideas. And so I had discovered something in my practice that I thought might be helpful for children with autism. And my brother said to me, "Hey, what's new?" at a family dinner. And I said, "Oh, I think I saw this kind of funky relationship with these children." So I explained it to him. And he's an inventor, was an inventor very young. And he said to me, "You know what? You need to patent that." I was like, "What? Why would I do that?" And he said, "Well, do you think it could help the kids?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, if you think it can help the kids and you want it to get to them, it has to have a commercial value." And so I'll have my patent attorney call you in the morning, which he did, and that was many, many patents ago. And what I realized as I talked to a lot of women in audiences like this, I realized that women don't take ownership of what they think about. They apply unique solutions every day, especially even with their children, right, that are brilliant, and yet they're just there in their own little world and not shared with the world. And I think as we do, conferences like this, where we can share our ideas and actually take ownership of it, it's really important. And that's not, it's historical for us. So if you think about women physicians, just in general, women have been high-ranking physicians in Russia way longer than they have here. And women had their own economy in Russia, and we didn't have it here. So women couldn't own things. So the first patent that was issued to a woman was probably 20 years after the first man patented something. And remember, patents are in our Constitution. There's a whole thing in the Constitution about ownership of ideas. And so that woman received a patent for a hat she designed using silk and straw, which is a unique combination. But she couldn't own it. I mean, her name was on it, but she couldn't own the business of it. Her husband had to own the business of it. And so historically, women in this country have not owned things. If you think about when women could get bank loans, women could get credit cards. Women couldn't have credit cards in my lifetime. That's incredible. And so, there was something called coverture, which is an old French word that talks about owning things. And so women in this country couldn't own things. And so I think we need to think about it in that way. And I testified in front of Congress in 2018 about the fact that women and individuals of color do not patent, and that we need that talent to put those things into place. And I think that we have to start thinking about ownership. I didn't think about it myself. It was my brother who instilled in me the fact that ownership of my ideas was really important for me. And so I think that taking ownership for what we've done, and I hear all the time in corporate world, I'm not in the classic corporate world, right? But in that world, you'll have an idea, you'll speak it, then the man speaks it, and all of a sudden, oh, it's a great idea, right? It's the same thing, just in a bigger context. So I think it's really important that if you see something and you understand it has value, to own it. Whether that's in the family, whether it's in work, wherever it is, we need to start owning things.
And along those lines, do you think also that women's ideas are also different? And maybe that value of having that perspective and that idea patented, could really provide value for so many other people.
Absolutely. I think that, we talk about DEI a lot. And it's still, for some places, just a check off the box. And the reality is that DEI actually is about talent and about those ideas coming into play that actually are brilliant ideas, but you need all of it together. If you only have one person, one gender, one person making those ideas, then you're not going to have the diversity of thought, and you're not going to have the creativity that you need. So going out and finding diversity is important, but you also have to have inclusivity. Because without that, you don't get there. You need to include everyone and put it together, and then you can have a lot of talent and a lot of it. And yes, women have very, very keen ideas about things, and a persistence that is amazing.
Well, if we could see the thought bubbles in this room right now, I'd imagine there's a lot of ideas people are saying, hey, maybe I should go patent that. That was great. So, Diane, you were a former bedside nurse, transformed or, decided to then be on a board and run a major hospital. At what point in your career did you say, I can do this, I need to do this, my voice needs to be heard? And I was standing outside with Diane before this, and a woman came up to her and said, I want to let you know that, I was in the ICU at Greenwich Hospital for not a very good reason, and your hospital was very soothing and calming. And we talked about how having a woman, run a hospital, that might be something that, is thought more of. So explain your journey and why it's so important that someone with your experience, is now able to run a hospital.
Like you, I had friends and colleagues. I'm thinking, well, on a much smaller scale, but to me, the trials and tribulations were very internal. They weren't as external. I'm not going to apologize or say they're small because they were big for me. Because I actually started out and didn't want to be a nurse or a doctor because that's what my family expected me to be because that's what they all were. And so I said, I'm going to be in business because I had an aptitude of numbers, and I still like numbers. I still like to do that kind of work. But it was only when I started my early career and being in college that I got a part-time job as a nursing assistant because I wanted to go shopping at the mall and I had no money. So I fell in love with my job, and that was the first pivotal moment that I started to say, I've got to answer for myself. I can't. I was doing it for the reverse. I was saying, I'm not going to do healthcare because that's what everybody expects me to do. I had to start listening to my heart. And I will tell you that through my entire career, to your point, it has been very transformational, but it has always been a little bit of an internal dialogue with myself. Am I feeling good about what am I doing? And does it, I will be, one thing I'm very candid, I was asking first, does it feel good to me? And then I said, and am I making a difference? And that has really been my course. And there have been barriers to that, because there are some times if I wanted to go on a path, what felt good to me was not what my group, my colleagues, my organization at the time wanted to do. And I remember a pivotal moment, to your point, is that I just knew that if I took a direction that was asked for me to take, it wasn't going to be in the best interests of the people that were trusting me to make good decisions for care. And at that time, it was the best decision I made, because I just stood up and said, no, I'm not doing that, and I'm not asking other people to do that. It was 25 years ago, and I remember like it was yesterday. But it actually gave me the inspiration to learn as much as I could about the area that I've chosen to be. The other thing that, so I would have to say, if you ask me about my career, it's been transformational. I intentionally wanted to learn as much as I could, because I thought that if I brought that caring, compassion into the work, it would make a difference. And yes, so this morning, 40 years later, I heard that word that said, yeah, okay, that was the right thing to do. So I really think, in summary, it's just that it's okay if your trials and your tribulations are internal. Just listen to yourself, because there really isn't a path out there that someone else is going to give you that is the right path. And I think that's important, because I have a lot of opportunity to meet with people that help them with their careers, and they want me to give them the answer. And I'm like, you have the answer. It's the answer sometimes is really uncomfortable and hard, because you're going to make a decision that you're like, oh God, what was I thinking? But it was still your answer. So I would just say, really trust in yourself, because nobody knows you like you do. And I think we give people too much power in that, and really listening to yourself. Like you knew, call the bank and come clean. You didn't need anybody else to say that. Like, and I bet a lot of people's advice would have been to, come up with a strategy and clean it up before you tell people. But the people that I've learned from have always encouraged me to just talk to really listen to my own voice. So I don't know if that answered the question,
Yeah,
but
no,
there I
I mean,
went.
definitely. And, I think, can you pinpoint a time maybe when you should have listened to yourself and you listened to someone else, or, you wished you had listened to that inner voice sooner?
Probably I wasted a year's tuition and I was paying my own college. So, that probably wasn't the best thing that I could have done, because at the time, those business managements, nothing was transferring. And so, but I actually think that was a really important lesson for me too, though. It was like one of those moments that I'm like, I got to listen to myself. This is my life. I would actually say that a little bit of that, I got comfortable, and I wished I had allowed myself to be uncomfortable earlier in my career. I was at an organization that I was able to change my job every 3 to 5 years, but stay within the same safety net. And I just one day woke up and said, it's just time to go. And I went, but I wish I had done that earlier. When I reflect on why did I not do that earlier, I was a little annoyed at myself, because I had really took a lot of pride in the fact that in my safety of my world, I changed and learned a new skill set every 3 to 5 years, which really helped me be able to move out of one role into a broader role. But yet when I really tested myself, it took 10 years. It shouldn't have taken 10 years. I wish I had listened to my own advice and got uncomfortable sooner. So that would, I guess, just pay attention. Like, sometimes we hear it, but do we always act on it? I wish I had done that.
That's great. And Cheryl, I mean, in terms of growing your construction company from a small family-owned to a multinational, I think your company just won the JFK Terminal project, which is incredible, as the head general contractor. How do you embrace change? How do you make sure that, you don't keep doing the same thing as your company is growing and, changing?
So we are program managers at JFK, not the general contractor. I just want to make sure we have that correct. I'm a change agent. I love change. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's probably also my negative as well. It's those insurmountable opportunities that got us in trouble in 2014. And so I'm always looking for something different, a new way of management, a new way to, bring our leadership team together and talk about strategy. What new technology can we apply to the construction industry to make our, work more efficient? And so for me, change is refreshing. So I love change.
That's great. And, so, I mean, that's a good way to look at it, too, as opposed to looking at it as a negative thing, but looking at it as a positive. Can you pinpoint one moment when the change happened that you were able to either reflect on it? Like, 'cause sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to see it, and you need a couple years to look back and be like, that change was really good, But has there been a moment where you sort of are in it and you're like, no, this is change and I need this right now?
I would say in more recent years, in the last 5 years, when, I decided we needed to build more of a sustainable business instead of a family business, a business that can operate without me. Right now I'm telling everyone I have 6 more years. Do you get it? 6 more years. My husband's a doctor. He retired in November, and I'm jealous. I left him at home this morning. So 5 years ago, I started looking at, I've got to get this business to a point where I have to figure out management and ownership. I have 2 daughters, one in the business, but not really excited about it, and the other one not in the business. So I don't really have any real hope there. I mean, I'm always hoping, but I don't see it right now. And building a management team of people, and you've probably heard this before, getting the right qualified people in the right seats. And the right people are the ones who get the role, who have a passion to do the role and really want to have the experience. And so having to release people, retire them, I guess is another good way to say it, to make way for the right people is difficult. Bringing on the wrong people, because, you know, if you go to a headhunter, they bring you people from outside, you really don't know them for a good year. I mean, it just takes a while to understand. If those individuals understand your culture, your mission, your vision, that they're going to do things the way you and your team do things, are they going to fit with the team? We brought in a senior leader one time, and she turned everybody off to the point where all the other managers said, listen, I'm quitting if you don't get rid of her. But, you know, she was really brown-nosing to me. So I'm like, oh, I love Julie. She's she's perfect. And, you know, she was from New Orleans, and her family was in New Orleans. And so she would come to New York, and on the weekend I'd say, oh, come out to Westchester. I'm going to cook you some grits. And so I was blind. And so going through all of those changes, you know, is very difficult. But I kept saying to myself, you have to go through this to build this management team that you need to make your business sustainable for the future.
Well, it sounds like the common theme through the three of you is family, you know, and sort of that support from family that you get through, you know, all of your stages of career. You know, Joan, you mentioned your brother. He really seemed like a, you know, supporter, also an ally. You know, if each of you could kind of go through, you know, who the person was that either mentored you or sponsored you or was your ally, you know, how important are those people, you know, in our careers? You know, do they need to be women? Is it more important actually that they are men? And, you know, how did they impact your career?
First, I want to say that I've spoken on a lot of panels in my time, and this is some of the most sage advice I have ever heard, okay? Because, I mean, it's about change and embracing change, and it's about what I call, which we were talking about, is whole body yes. Mm-hmm. You have to come to a whole body yes. If something in your purview doesn't feel right to you, don't dismiss it, because usually you're right. And so when I'm in that space, I make sure that it's just not my blindness to something that I'm feeling that this isn't right or something isn't right. But I think it's important to get advice and look at, because your people had to tell you they were going to leave, right? Got to that point. So I think you need to get the advice of the people around you who know what's going on, but you have to have a whole body yes. If something in your gut is telling you not to do that, don't do it. Just don't. And you can rationalize it away all you want. You could say, this is better for my family, or it's better for this, or it's better for that. You've got to have a whole body yes, otherwise you're not going to be successful. And so I think this is just an amazing two colleagues here, just three, just terrific. And so my brother was very important to me in this journey that I've made, right? He was in business. He started business very young. He invented what is now really the precursor, was a precursor of GPS, were these sun sensors that went on satellites when he was in his 20s, and started a business, sold the business, retired, went to Juilliard, had a family, just all of that. But he was very important to me because he was able to see me, because he knows me so well, and see me against the rest of the world that I'm dealing with. So I go into a meeting with bankers or whoever, and I'm usually the only woman. And, you know, they were more inclined to speak to my intern than they were to me, the male intern. And so I'd come back from a meeting and go, gosh, what the heck? Like, why is this going on? And he'd say to me, you know, Joan, they mistake your kindness for weakness. Right? Kindness for weakness. He said, you don't brag about yourself. You don't wear, typical suits like a lot of the other business people wear. You hug people. You smile. You do all the things they don't do in business. So they don't even know how to deal with you, let alone talk to you. He said, but they don't know what you know. He said, so when you do open your mouth, you're going to zing them so hard they don't know what hit them. And so I would go into those meetings and be like, okay, you don't get me, all right. And then, I was able to show them what I know. And when I started the business, I knew nothing about business. Nothing, zero. But I knew I had a discovery for these kids that might be able to help them. So I went to one person, we're talking about funding, and he's banging on the table saying to me, he's a venture capital guy, and he's banging on the table going to me, you need brick and mortar. You have to have a fully brick and mortar company in order for anyone to invest in you. I was like, really? Do I need that? I don't think I need that right now. I was just starting. So I called up one of someone I knew, was an MBA from Wharton, and I said, do I need brick and mortar? She's like, hell no. I was like, okay. And so I utilized the services, and then I had one family. I was between practice and doing this company, and I went back and forth. I was writing patents. I was practicing. I was going back to school to learn how to do clinical trials. I was doing all this stuff, and it was just a lot. And so I had friends, and they were at dinner at their home. They went to the desk. They took out a checkbook. They wrote me a check, and they said, quit your job and go do this thing, because you'll never know if it will help these kids. And so my friend's father, who was a senior partner of one of the biggest law firms, was a tremendous mentor. He made an investment. He taught me how to look at cap tables, to look at, how to find the right accounting firm, and how to really do a business the right way. And so we're little, but we have all the things we need to be bigger. And so I think that getting help from people and looking all around is important. And one thing I learned, there's a golf coach. His name is Gio Valiente, and he coaches some of the bigger golfers. And his theme is that when you're going to make a golf swing, you have to take into account the grass, the loft, right, the wind, the temperatures, your ability to swing. All of those things come into a golf swing, but you only swing once. So you have to assimilate all of that and then make your move. And so taking all that information is taking in information, but then you have to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to swing. And that meant a lot to me because there's a lot of noise in my life. Everyone's telling me what to do, right? And so I have to evaluate that and then go forward. So I look at individuals as mentors, lots of people as mentors, right? So Art, the lawyer, was just so keen in my life and was very proud that I had taken that step. He raised 3 daughters. He understood the things that you have to come up against. He was the managing partner in a big firm in the city. And so I think it's important. But, I don't know how many of you read the book Outliers? Okay. So this man is one of those outliers. He was born in 1930. He was poor. He was Jewish. Grew up in Chicago. And in the book it talks about people either going to Michigan or going to Queens College, right? And he went to Michigan, went to Yale Law School, and couldn't get a job in any of those white shoe firms, right? So started his own firm. It merged many times. He was a big M&A guy and did very well and always remembered that route. Always remembered that he had to come up against that adversity. So he was so keen to help me, and it was just really great. So between Art, my brother, and all the other people in my life, I'm very, very honored to have mentors everywhere.
But you got them to believe in you. I mean, nobody takes out their checkbook unless they really feel like passionate about,
Right.
So your speech must have been pretty impressive.
So I think what happened was I developed what I found organically. I was curious. So I was like, these are children with autism, and they all look different. One speaks, speech communication is a big deal for these, it's the impairment, one of them. Some don't speak at all, some speak a little, some speak a lot but gibberish, they repeat whole, scenes from movies. And all of those symptoms that they had were different, even though they were three, core symptoms. But what they ate was exactly the same, child after child after child after child. I'm like, how can that be? I've never seen children of one, whatever, whether that's disease or condition or location, eat the same thing. And it turned out that so I went the next step further. I took 6 kids and had autism and looked at all these biological parameters, stool, blood, urine, and found that these first 6 kids all had low levels of the primary enzyme that digests protein. So they didn't eat protein. That was the thing. The thing was they ate really high carbohydrates, and it never changed. I thought, oh, that's curious. And then I did more kids. And after a while, my colleagues were doing, other physicians were doing these tests, and we found out that like 65% of the children with autism have this finding, which had never been done before. And it's part of what I had patented that my brother saw early on, that maybe if we, see this finding and then replace it, maybe it can help them. And so that was, sort of what that was. But I knew I had to collect data. Science is about data, right? So I had 1,500 tests, or 1,500 children, which was probably about 3,000 or more tests of different kinds that I did, and thought, okay, this is real. And so was able to convince people that with 2 patents, right, and with all of these tests, that maybe I really had something here. So I went into it with that. So if the patent office says this is unique and real, that was one level of sort of that. And so I had that. Then I went to FDA. I hired an FDA consultant. My first hire in the company was a gentleman who was a PhD, immunologist, who looked at what I had and said, oh my God, do you know what you have here? I was like, no, not really. And he's like, oh, this is really important. And he's still with me, right? He's our chief scientific officer. And so I used the data and the patents and all of that to say, this is real. I'm going to go and do this. I can't promise you it's going to work. That I can tell you. I don't know. We're going to go through a clinical trial. Things happen in clinical trials. I have no idea. But I have enough to believe that it can work. And people told me, really? Who are you to develop this? I walked out of a meeting one time and said, who are you? When these big companies are doing this, trying to look for this, who are you to do this? And I looked at my colleague and said, okay, I think we're out of here. And I got up and we left, right? So I've been through it all. It's a gut-brain connection. Gut-brain 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago was like crazy. Now it's like, oh, microbiome, it's cool, right? It's like, whoa.
Good thing you own the patents.
Yes, all of them. All of them. And so people are like, well, you didn't do this. It's all what people perceive. And then our doctors got a call about publication. And so we were like, okay, they want us to publish our data. How do they even know we have this data? And we got a seminal paper that I think is going to change all the way we look at not only autism, but the neurodevelopmental conditions, which people don't normally pay attention to, in JAMA in November, which just changed everything for us. People were like, oh my God, JAMA published this, it's real? Like, oh my goodness. Even after the doctors that did our trial, we did 23 sites, including Yale and other places, and they know it's real, but now the world knows it's real. And so I just had to keep fighting through that. Now it's 20 years, so.
That's amazing. I don't know how I'm going to go back to my desk today. I know. So Diane, along the same lines, you, as a nurse, you obviously are on the front lines. You're seeing, I think COVID shined a light on nursing, and nurses. I think everyone now has a much more appreciation, deep appreciation for that job. And who was the person at the table that was sort of supporting you, saying, this is the voice we need, this is who we need to lead us, and how either did you find that person, or did you meet them, and how did they make sure that you were able to move up?
That's a really interesting question, and honestly, I think about the COVID experience, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that I, along with my team, would experience that. But what was extraordinary about that, it's a little bit about what we've all been talking about, is it felt really, really scary, there's no doubt. I have my colleagues here now. I think I saw Mark Kozak, our Chief Operating Officer, with us, and I remember him calling me, and I'm thinking, boy, I'm hearing fear in a man's voice that I'm not sure I usually hear at work. Pay attention, Diane. So because I was away and I went back, and really it was a team of how we, we just had to come together in uncertain times. But this is, the reason I'm giving you a little bit of that background is the pivotal moment for me was when we as a team were comfortable, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but we found it necessary to tell our staff we didn't know. Because I led my entire career having the answers, and if I didn't have the answers, I went and found someone 100 times smarter than me and got them the answers. I had no problem with that. But people's lives were on the line, our staff's lives were on the line, our patients' lives were on the line, and I didn't have the answers. I thought there was an answer, and the answer changed 26 seconds later. And we thought we had a solution, and 3 minutes later that was not the solution. And these people were looking at us as leaders to be really, to give them the answers, because everybody was scared. So I will say the pivotal moment for me was back to kind of my roots. Just get comfortable, or at least do what you know is right. And I don't want to say I did this, because we did this collectively. We just got really honest with everybody. Not that we weren't honest before, but our job was to make people's lives normal so that they could do the hard work that they do taking care of people. You protect, I don't want, you just like, our job is to keep things smooth so they can keep moving forward. And I just realized transparency. Transparency with, I'm going to tell you what I know when I know it. And when I find out that wasn't the right thing, I'm going to tell you that. And that's when I really got, okay, we can do this together. But the facade, if you will, of pretending it was all moving in one way when maybe it wasn't, it was too much. And people deserve more than that. They deserve to be treated with respect and transparency. And yes, we still needed to keep it together and needed to have the solutions. And, some things you tried and like, okay, that didn't work. But it was really that would be the moment for me that I really realized that it was a real challenge, and it was back to doing what I knew in my heart was right, and that was telling people what I could tell them, but also telling them I didn't really know 100% certain. So,
do you think, being a woman, that insight or that sort of perspective was different than what maybe a man at the table would have done in that instance?
Well, I don't know, but what I will tell you from my own point, at my own vantage point, I do think that I had the advantage of feeling comfortable letting people know how I feel. I had an advantage of telling people that I was scared, and I had an advantage of having them feel my thoughts and feel my worries and feel my pride and joy too. So I actually feel like when you're able to connect with people, it's you can move through really challenging things together. It's hard to move through challenges when it's on a spreadsheet. it's on a whiteboard or a PowerPoint or whatever. It's what I like about this audience right now, because you feel very intimate. It's like conversational and real human beings, caring about what we talk about. So I actually think on this one, I think women have it. I personally, as a woman who was very comfortable talking about how she feels about things, was an advantage. And I think for men in the workplace haven't had that advantage. I actually think it's an advantage we don't use enough. Because I do think people, especially post-COVID, people want to connect with people. We want to know what we are talking about and what we feel makes a difference. And women, I think, have had more opportunity to do that. At one point, that was, and it still is actually, it still is frowned upon in a lot of circles that we're all in. I'm just choosing to get out of those circles. And a little bit of what we said, what we were talking about this morning, sometimes I am just tired. I'm just tired of, I was on a meeting the other day and I looked up the word because I had just said something and one of my male colleagues said something right after that. And the chair of one of big departments at Yale texted me and she goes, "You were just mansplained." I'm like, "What's mansplained?" So she said, he just said what you said. I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So we still have work to do, so I have to not be like, I got to get out of those circles. We have so much, we have to keep talking about this stuff, because we bring a lot to the table. It doesn't have to be the same. I feel like we can do extraordinary things with our male colleagues. We're not the same, but what we have is equal. And sometimes better, sometimes not, but we have to do it collectively, and our voice is still not heard, just that we're talking about this.
Been in this business over 30 plus years, and it's taken that long to really get a voice that's heard in the industry. I remember 30 years ago going to the New York Building Congress, which is a trade association of all the developers, architects, engineers, accountants, peripheral services that service the AEC, architecture, engineering, construction community. And we would go into these dinners and, 500 people. We have 500 people coming tomorrow to the Building Congress. And it's all men, all white men. I mean, there wasn't even one black man. And there were probably 20 women. And I remember thinking to myself, gee, this is just going to be difficult to overcome all of this, because you go into the room, they don't talk to you. If you find a woman, at least you can go and say, "Oh, I like your outfit," whether you do or not. Or you could find some commonality when you went to the bathroom. And so how do you break through? So when I was in my 30s, 40s, I would run up to a man and say, "Hi, my name is Cheryl McKissick, and I'm blah, 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 blah." And I would do my little TED Talk. And so I did this for 5 or 6 years at the Building Congress, and people would finally say, "Oh, we know her. Her name is Cheryl McKissick, blah, 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 blah." Well, one event I bring my husband to, and my husband sees me running up to all these men, and he's like, "Cheryl, now you've been doing this for 15, 20 years. I don't think you need to run up to anybody. They need to come over and say hello to you." Now, that was like a shock. Like, you really think I've made it to that point where someone should come over and introduce themselves to me? He said, "Just try it." So I did. So the next event, I didn't go up to anyone with my little spiel. "Hey, I'm Cheryl McKissick." And I just stood there, and people came by and they said, "Hey, Cheryl, how you doing? You want to work on this project, or how is your project going?" And it was a flip for me. And so, you think about now 15, 20 years of being around these people. Now, in COVID, in 2020, I was made chair of the New York Building the New York Building Congress Foundation, the first female, the first black to ever take that role after 30 years after going into that room of dark suits. And so, you know, then I realized, okay, I have a voice among my peers. And it's, you know, it's that wholeness that we're talking about. And when you get to the point where you have the confluence of, you know who you are, you have the experience, and you have something relative to say. But how do you get there? I mean, you know, I don't think I got there till I was in my 50s. I mean, like right now, I just roll through my day, however, you know, doing whatever I need to do. Did I look at these questions? No, because I know that the answer I'm giving is coming straight from my heart, from the experiences I already have, and it's better for me just to do it off the cuff. And I'm not gonna have the time to write anything down anyway. So I'm just saying, getting to that point of confluence is the best feeling in the world. And the earlier you can get to that point, the better. And you get there by taking the advice of all the panelists here, and like Dr. Fallon. I had, when I first started my business in New York in 1991, I couldn't pay my first employee. I'm out to dinner with all my friends, investment bankers, and I'm telling them, they know my history, they know I have a project, they know I'm gonna get paid for my client, and they all took out their checkbooks, and they gave me $5,000 each. And my good friend and doctor here, Ro Maloney, knows half of those people. George Van Amson, Milton Irving. I mean, this was back in the Solomon Brothers days. And so, you know, that type of mentorship and friendship is extremely important. But it's in that moment, telling them what I needed to do, I had a glimpse of that confluence, just a glimpse of it. I wasn't like that 24/7. I'm like that 24/7 now. Right. And so the sooner you can get there, when you get that glimpse, you're like, ooh, that's it. Yes, try to be there all the time, all the time.
The younger people in the audience are wondering what a checkbook is, so I'm just kidding. We use Venmo now, right?
That's how we transferred money way back in the day.
I think, are we going to open it up the floor now? So we're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes just, you know, Q&A. So I think, are we going to ask people to come up, or are we going to? Okay, so you can walk up, or you want to hand the microphone? Anyone have a question? You can use mine.
Come on, you all have questions. I know you do. Who has a question? We saw those bubbles.
Hi, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I run a ghostwriting company, so I help people tell their stories. And I wonder, what I'm hearing here is, so this is a bit of an observation and then a question, so I apologize. I'm hearing here that you're finding your voice, and you've shared that process with us. And I wonder if you could share for some of us here who are still perhaps cultivating that voice, some of the things that you've done to help yourselves find it where you are now. Thank you.
I think it's an organic process. So I think that confluence comes by laying all the groundwork, going up to every person that you saw at the conference. You know, whatever it is that you do, admitting that you don't know what's going on in COVID. This is the head of a hospital. They don't know what's going on. But being able to say that and then work through it with your colleagues. Those are all sort of mini confluences, but then eventually all those things come together. And I think you have to just let it happen and live with your passions. Sometimes we sublimate those things, right? And we can't do that. You have to go with your passions, continue doing it organically, and then it's almost like it just comes together. And you're like, wow, how did that happen? You know, I always talk about I had 3 things that I love in my life from when I was a kid: medicine, children, and baseball, right? And they seem very disparate, but they kind of all have come together now in my life, where I can sit on C.C. Sabathia's foundation board, or I can, you know, it's amazing how it all kind of comes together. But you can't force it to come together, but you have to keep living your authentic self. When you live your authentic self, it somehow comes together.
And I would add to that, take time for reflection. I think reflection is very important. And I mean, on a daily basis, on an hourly basis if you need it. When you go through situations and you reflect back, well, I got through this, I got through that, I got through that. So I'm going to get through this current issue that I'm dealing with. And I listen to myself. If I wake up in the morning and things feel off kilter, they don't feel right. And I mean, like, you can sense that today is not going to be a good day. I am very mindful of that. And, you know, I may go into the office and interact with just a few people, because the more people you talk to, because everybody's trying to give you their monkey, remember that. So the more people you talk to, the more that's going to come in. Or I will completely say, you know, I'm calling in on a mental health day. Today is a mental health day. And be mindful of that and take that day just for yourself. We need time just to, you know, not only reflect, but also, you know, re-energize ourselves, talk to ourselves. Whatever we need to do it and take care of ourselves first.
You know, I feel like I'm just adding on to what my friends here said, but in that same thing, I'm actually very purposeful about those things that, you know, like my kids laugh. They're like, Mom, what are we going to do with these books when you die? Because I probably have hundreds of journals, and I journal every single day to do just what you said. Sometimes I don't even know that I'm doing it, to look back and say, how did this work? How did it go? And I ask myself, am I doing what I want to do? But I have to be concrete about it, because otherwise it goes into the space of not getting done. So I would say the same is put yourself first and really pay attention to how your life is going. Is it the way you want? Because there isn't anyone else that's going to do it for you. It's no one else's job. I learned that like very quickly. I'm one of 6 kids. It is my job to figure out my life. No one else is going to take that on for me. So I got real intentional and real purposeful.
I have a question. Just one or two. We know you professionally now, learning about your bios and all of that. If there is one or two hobbies that you each enjoy, one or two hobbies just to shed some light on that side of your life, because you talk about mental health and all of that. What gives each of you that joy of a hobby?
Okay, I'll start. Mine are golf, and I wish I could remember everything Dr. Fallon said when I tee off. But maybe I'm doing it subconsciously, but I'm not doing it consciously. And cigars.
So it took me years to be okay with admitting this publicly. I have absolutely no hobbies whatsoever. And I used to try to have them so people would thought I was more than what I was. I do love to read, and I love leadership. I love trying to better sometimes I'll read 5 or 6 books at once, but I throw half of them away and don't finish them because I don't like them, but something else will come along. But I don't have any hobbies. But I do love what I do, but got nothing.
So I have and that's probably because you're one of 6 kids, probably.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hobbies. I love to do things, and I like to go from thing to thing. So I'll play anything with the ball: golf, tennis, basketball, baseball. In fact, I usually go and play baseball down at the Yankee Tampa Center with 150 guys every January. I didn't go this year because I've just had too many things going on. But so anything with the ball, and I play the piano. I've been playing the piano since I was 5, so I do that too.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this incredible wisdom. I have a quick question about the whole body yes and how you're able, or tools that you can help provide to decipher the difference between, is it not a whole body yes, or is it fear speaking? Especially as we look at the various parts of our lives, whether we're raising children, that's one segment that may have its own fear or its own question marks. And how does that necessarily not cloud what could potentially be a whole body yes if you weren't quite so afraid?
That's a great question, because fear clouds a lot of things, right? It keeps us from doing many things. You've got a lot of fearlessness up here, right? That's what you're looking at. People who went ahead and did things when, it was not usual or customary. I think that a whole body yes for me is the first thing that happens literally in everything of my body, my gut, my brain. Like, that doesn't seem right to me. And it's not a mindful thinking about, oh, I'm afraid of that. It's literally what first comes to my body, and it's like, okay, this doesn't feel right. So, for example, recently we have a whole new group of people that have come on to take us kind of to the next step, and they wanted to hire this guy to sort of put in place that he can sort of organize our messaging and make it, sort of coherent. A lot of experience, great resume, okay. I won't use the words that I was using from him from the first moment I met him, but I trusted the people who said that he would be good for us. But my body, everything about me said, there's no way, okay, that this man is going to last in my life. Why? Okay, because he was taking a call, and he said, look, I'll just do it from the car. I can't really get on the thing, which is, you don't start that way, right? Okay, you start that way. But what he didn't say was he's going to be in a race car going around a track, because one of his clients is the racing group, so it's going while he's doing this, right? And my whole body yes said, done with him, but I didn't go there, right? I let it play on, and we did some. My friend, someone who works in my office, who's really good at words, right, said something about being a wordsmith. And he said, you may be a wordsmith, but I'm lightning in a bottle. Okay, that was 2, all right? And then I got to 3, and that's when I let it go, right? That's when I cut him off. The third one was that we're talking about, we did PR training. I've done it before. And the PR person that was doing the training said, I always like to talk to Joan. I always learn something, and sometimes she uses words that I don't know, I have to go look up because they're either science words or something. And this guy on the Zoom says, well, Joan, I don't know if this is you, but some people use big words just to show off. That was the end of that, right? He was done. But my whole body, yes, said, no, talking from a race car is not a good thing for us. But I didn't listen. Okay, and so there's no harm, no foul, but it was weeks of aggravation for me because I knew that I was going against my grain, right? So when you see that, when you know something's not right, then you have to act on it. So that wasn't about fear, it was about knowing that that was not okay for us as a group. And so just listening, and it's a muscle that you have to develop. I developed it, I think, in practice when I looked at someone and said, oh, this was what you were told? No, that's not what this is. And so you just kind of listen to what you have inside. I think it's important.
Yeah, I would just add to that, you need to understand the fear. Fear is, first of all, a natural feeling, but understand where it's coming from. Is it the unknown? Are you in danger? I mean, what is the fear? If it's just the unknown, or you're afraid of how you're going to be perceived, then I take that as a challenge. If I feel like it that day, I take that as a challenge. And, I focus on the word courage. Have the courage to overcome this thought, this fear, because you don't know what the other side is going to be like. And so fear is an opportunity to react differently and learn more about yourself. The right kind of fear. If you're in danger, run.